Hey y'all, welcome to the Devon A. Morris Unfiltered Call-In Show. Have a seat. Let's get ready. You have any questions? Come on, call in. Come on to that Discord channel. Do me a favor, get the unfiltered crew some finger snaps. We're ready to get started here. Mondays, 8 p.m. Every single Monday, we're here. I'm excited about it. Are you? Let's get this show started, y'all. The greatest Scrum show on earth. I'll see y'all soon. Enjoy. Yo, what's up, y'all? How y'all doing? Hopefully you've had an a super amazing Monday. If you don't know me, my name is Devon Morris. I've been around Agile since 2005, certified Scrum trainer, first black one in terms of Scrum Alliance, period. So I've been doing Scrum for since 2013, at least the training part since 2013. I also got a lot of other certifications, but today is just one of those days where we're going to talk about something really interesting, and that is going to be mastering agile growth, scaling and descaling tactics. Probably one of the biggest things that's happening is the movement around descaling with all these organizations that are scaling, and so they're trying to figure things out. So if you got any questions around that, this is the show where we're going to talk about it. Now, if you've never been here before, this is a place where you can ask your questions, but just understand, about 5 minutes after, we go into a topic, and that topic will be the mastering agile growth topic. About 25 minutes after, maybe 30 minutes after, maybe 45 minutes after. I've been going a little bit long lately. Then I'll open up the floor so you can ask any questions that you're welcome to ask. People throw their questions in the comments, but hey, I'm good enough for you to join me live on the show if that's something that you want to do. Just in case you had a really important question. Now, look, here's the deal. I'm over there on Facebook, right? I stay on Facebook because my mama watched the show. Like, she'd get on Facebook and watch the show at some point, right? But the idea is that you could be on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, just make sure you say hi. Just know if you want to interact with the show, please join us on YouTube, because YouTube is the place where we have the exchange. That's the best place to join us. But I'll send the link over. I'll grab the link real quick and I'll send a link over for you all on LinkedIn, just in case you want to join us over there. If you have a question, it'll be much easier for me to answer your question over on that side. So I'm actually grabbing that link for you all right now, just in case you need it. But other than that, we just do what we do here, man. We just do what we do, nothing really crazy. We just here to kind of have a good time together and continue building this community. And so, you want to be a part of this community, make sure you subscribe, like all those great things, because that's what we do. Let's see, what else can I tell you? In terms of my week, I'm doing some co-training stuff today. So it's amazing. People are doing an amazing job in terms of what they're doing. So I'm just like really satisfied, right? And it's just one of those things where it's just like, I like to see people grow. I like to see people do their thing, right? And so I ain't got no jealousy in my bone. I just am here to just help people grow and be the best that they can be at this thing we call Agile, Scrum, whatever. Here's the deal. You know how we do. If you've been here before, if you've never been here, well, if you've been here before, just say hi. If you've never been here before, make sure you let me know this is your first time here. Let me know this is the first time here. If it is your first time, I'm going to give you one of those. That's what I'm going to give you, right? So just come on in, grab your favorite drink, whatever your beverage is that you love. I got a little bit of water over here. I got my normal ginger beer here. So literally, I'm ready to go. You feel what I'm saying? So it's just a good thing. What's going on the rest of the week? Man, much of nothing. Yeah, just more work, right? Work doesn't change. Just always working on something. But right now school started back up for me, the PhD thing, right? And so I got, a couple classes I need to deal with. One of them they just registered today, which is ridiculous because I like to really start off, right? So that's going to be dragging on me for the next few weeks, lots of weeks. But hey, that's a good thing. That's not a problem. One day I'll be like Dr. Devon, right? So we'll see what happens. Other than that, man, it's just kind of chill. Just kind of chill. I'm just loving it. But I love it as usual. You all know what my attitude and disposition is normally, right? So that being said, I think it's time for us to really jump into it. I think it's time for us to jump into it. So let's talk about it, right? Let's just go ahead and jump right into the topic, right? Mastering agile growth, scaling and descaling, right? That's our topic for today. Now, some of you all may not know much about descaling, but I'll talk about each thing as we go along, right? But first, I'm going to talk about some real general stuff, and then I'll talk about some strategies in terms of scaling, some strategies in terms of descaling, so you can be good to go, right? And think about both of them, because you could be in either or situation. Whatever situation you're in, we're going to take care of you today, right? And so when you think about it, let's go ahead and start this little conversation off in a simple place, right? Understanding scaling. That's the first thing you really need to do, because scaling is an interesting thing, and it's something that really gained a lot of popularity when the Scaled Agile framework just kind of popped up almost out of nowhere. And it didn't pop up out of nowhere. Dean Leffingwell had wrote 2 or 3 books about scaling. And so the information was in the ethos, but the idea is that people wasn't grasping onto it, because people were just agilists, purists were just saying don't scale at all, which is unreasonable for large organizations, right? So when Scale Agile Framework came, SAFe came, boom, you had a big movement in terms of scaling. And that's cool, because it's what a lot of organizations is looking for, is a way to package these things, right? Because when you think about it, it's really hard when you're a large organization and you're faced with the challenges of putting these agile practices on larger teams, on larger products or projects, whatever the heck you're using, within really big enterprises or across a lot of people within an enterprise. So when you start thinking about scaling, you're talking about extending the agile practices beyond just an individual or a 1 or 2 or 3 teams, right? And you have to find a way to make sure that there's alignment across teams, that teams have the ability to collaborate, and that they can be as efficient across the value stream as they can be, so you can maximize the money that you're putting into it. Now, that's what scaling is all about. Descaling really refers to finding ways to simplify and decentralize agile practices so you can address the inefficiencies. You can restore, the essence of what the Agile Manifesto says in a complex, large environment. So these are two, opposite things that you have to find ways to deal with. But the first side of dealing with that is making sure you understand what scaling is all about, right? And so I want to give some tips in general as you think about scaling in general, but you may be on one side of this equation already. You may be in an organization that's already scaling, or you may be in an organization that has scaled already and you need to descale, right? You might be in either one situation, or you could be in a situation where neither one of those things have happened to you yet, right? And so let's make sure we have a clear understanding of some of the key aspects of what you need to deal with in terms of scaling. Now, I'm going to go back to the slides here, because I think the really first thing that you need to think about is alignment. Alignment is extremely important, because alignment is taking your people and your teams and aligning them, and understand what I put in bold here, aligning them with the organization's strategic objectives and the organization's priorities. I mean, today I was in a PO class, and in PO class I always teach, hey, let's focus on return on investment. And one of the first things that I talk about on day 1 with a class is there's the customer/user and there's the organization, and there's an overlap that exists in between them. Well, everything that we do has to be in alignment, has to be truly in alignment with the organization's strategies and priorities, right? And so that alignment becomes absolutely key. And when you start scaling or think about scaling, one of the biggest things you should try to address is, the alignment across the board, right? That's super important. It is something for you to truly deal with. And I'm thinking to myself, a lot of times when I see people, do this scaling thing, I don't think that they think about alignment. I just don't think that they even address it, right? So it's just one of those things where it's really one of the very first things that you should address or think about as you're even proposing any kind of scaling, because it doesn't matter what the framework is that you choose, but you're gonna have to think about alignment. Now, here's the deal. The next thing that you should think about, absolutely, is how you're gonna deal with coordination. When it comes to communication, when it comes to collaboration across multiple teams, especially those multiple teams that are delivering an integrated product, an integrated set of solutions, right? You have to figure out ways to do that, right? We've done it all the time, right? You think about if I'm building hardware for a phone and I got software to put on that phone, we got to integrate that at some point. But then you have situations where, hey, the thing that I'm building is so big that we got to have multiple teams deal with it. Well, the question soon becomes, how do you really deal with the communication that happens across those teams and their need to collaborate, and how do you need to structure yourself in order to be able to do that? This becomes extremely important when you think about scaling. Now, it just doesn't stop there, right? Because another thing that we have to consider is going to be the actual decentralization. Right? Decentralization is about pushing decision making down to the team, making sure you empower teams and the people that are actually doing the work to be able to make decisions to help them move forward, right? Because by doing that, it's going to help to maintain alignment, and it's going to help them to be able to achieve whatever goals we have. In Scrum, we tend to think about sprint goals. We got product goals as well. But whatever goals we have, we want to put them in a position where they can do that. So when you think about scaling, you just can't forget about decentralization, or at least that decision maker and empowerment needs to go down, 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 down. I just thought about a commercial, right? I'm from Chicago, and there used to be a commercial that went downer, downer, downer. Now, I don't remember who it was for, but I clearly remember the guy going downer, downer, downer. Anyway, that was a tangent. I'm going to get back on it, right? Here's the deal. The next thing on my list, right, is going to be value stream mapping, right? Value stream mapping. Now, here's the deal. If you don't know what the value stream is, go read something, right? Basically, it is the set of activities and only the activities that produce whatever the value is that you're trying to produce. But again, it's the activities and only the activities that produce the value that you're trying to produce, right? So if I am literally making a sandwich, right? And I'm writing down every step for the sandwich making process. That writing down every single step is not a part of the value stream. The actual making of the sandwich is a part of the value stream. So it's the activities and only the activities that are part of the value creation. Now, does that mean that you do none of the other activities? No, it does not mean that, right? It doesn't mean that at all. But all those other activities are non-value add but necessary. And you want to have as little of those activities as possible, right? You want to focus on your value stream because you want to identify things within the value stream. But here's the deal. The other side of the equation is you want to optimize the value stream. And the more you streamline that value stream, the better position you're going to be in, because that means that it takes you, less cycle time to actually deliver something, right? And so you want to put yourself in that position. And realistically, what I'm saying to you is that when you are scaling, you cannot only think about the process. You got to think about how you build things as well, right? You have to think about how you build things as well. I walk into organizations all the time, and they want to do Scrum, and I tell them in the beginning, just know Scrum is not your only solve here. It's just not. We're going to have to address the way we build things sooner or later, or you're only going to get so much improvement. So focusing on that value stream is a part of dealing with that in terms of whatever you're building. If you're building widgets, wood items, you're building software, it doesn't matter. You're making cars, it doesn't matter. You want to find ways to optimize the value stream. That's extremely important. So don't forget that, right? And then last but not least on this list of things, right, that you need to consider is continuous improvement. This always comes up. It should be nothing new to anybody in this room, right? Anybody that has actually been here before, because this comes up in almost everything, right? You want to build a culture that has continuous learning and adaptation in its heart. It is just a part of their beating heart. That's what you want, right? You want them to always be thinking about that, right? And here's the deal. I always say to myself, there's two things I want to continuously improve: the thing that we're building, right? And the actual process that it takes to build it. So I'm looking at product and process all the time. And I think that those two things are extremely important to whatever we do, right? So if you didn't understand much about scaling, tell me what I missed here. Because I gave you 5 different things for you to consider, different aspects of things that you should consider when you're scaling. And there are many of you all that are here right now on LinkedIn, right here on YouTube. Type in the chat for me, what did I miss there? What did I miss? What are some of the things that you would say people need to consider when they're thinking about scaling? Some of the things that they should do or think about when they're scaling. Now, what I'm going to talk about next is really very simple. I'm going to talk about the actual Agile scaling strategies, and I'm going to talk about descaling strategies. So I'm going to talk about both things separate so we got it all covered. Does that make sense? But just do me a favor in the comments. Did I miss something in terms of what you need to consider when you are scaling? So that's really, really important and really nothing crazy about it, right? So let's jump into our next overall set of topics, right? It's scaling strategies. And I'm talking about Agile scaling strategies in general. The very first one on this list, and it is if I'm performing Agile, I kind of do the same thing, right? So if I'm performing any kind of Agile, one of the first things that I really do, and this is true for scaling, is that you have to choose the right framework. It's one of those things where you have to choose that framework that aligns with the size of your organization, the structure of the organization, and the culture that exists within your organization. You have to understand clearly that every scaling framework has pros and it have cons, right? And so you have to determine what's going to be the best fit for you, and you're likely still going to need to adjust it, right? I do not believe that there's any one size that fit all in terms of any of these frameworks, whether you're doing one team Agile or you're doing 100 team, Agile. I don't think there's one size that fit all, right? And so when you really get it down to the nuts and bolts, you got to determine those pros, those cons, what fits in your organization the best. What is it that you absolutely need to have? And so selecting that right framework is really probably one of the very first steps of what you need to think about. And here's the deal. If you're thinking about scaling, why can't you try more than one framework, right? Why can't you run multiple? Why can't you do multiple things, right? And to see which one works best in your environment, right? I don't know. But I know that you need to evaluate it instead of just going all in without figuring out how it's going to, be suited in your environment. So you want to make sure that when you think about scaling, that first thing is, hey, let me find the right framework first, okay? Now, the second thing that you want to think about, and this is the way you should implement Agile in general, and that is make sure that you are using an incremental approach, right? So what I'm saying to you is really adopt incrementally, whatever it is. A pilot is important, and gradually expanding so you can do what? Learn and adjust, okay? Now, there's nothing about what I'm saying to you that I wouldn't say if I wasn't kind of putting Scrum in the building for the first time. Just think about it. If I was putting Scrum in the building for the first time, I'm going to take an incremental approach to it, right? We're going to start off with a pilot, right? And then we're going to expand that. And we're going to do that not in a, everybody got to change overnight way. It's just not going to happen that way, right? And so for me, almost any way that you implement change, it should go small and then grow big for large organizations. If you're a super small organization, maybe you go all in immediately, right? If your organization is about to go out of business, maybe you need to do it immediately. I don't know. You got to make that choice, but I think the best approach is to use an incremental approach where you can actually learn over time and change things and tweak things without it being something that impacts everybody. It is, whenever I go into any organization, it is how I press to move forward with any transformation whatsoever. So that incremental approach, I think, is absolutely critical to you being successful. If you don't do that, let me know how it works for you. Let me know how it works out for you, right? Let me know how it works out for you. Let me know how soon it is you get fired, man. For real. Feel me? Any of y'all been fired before? Agilists been fired, right? If you've been fired before, let me know, right? I have. Have you? That's a real question, y'all. Let me know in the chat if you've been thrown out the building. Anyway, back to the subject. Let's keep going, y'all. Let's keep going. Here's the next thing, right? So incremental approach is very, very important. I would also next say training and coaching is the next big investment you should make, right? And here's the deal. I'm not saying that. Okay, I'm not saying that when you try your incremental approach, I agree. You need to have somebody who has some knowledge in the building, right? I'm not saying spend money on people at that point, right? I'm really not, right? Because how do you know who the right coach is, right? But how do you know what to train people in unless you're going to train people in several things so then you can get an opportunity? But I would do that still small, right? But I really do firmly think, right, that you need to invest in training people on what the basics are. And then you need to bring somebody in who has some expertise at this thing that you're trying to do. I like to read books because books kind of show me somebody else that has made the mistake before me. And so I'd rather learn from their mistake than to make the mistake myself. And so to me, that's what coaching is going to bring you. Somebody who's made this, who has had practical experience. And they're not dealing only with theory, they've had practical experience, right? So you got to make sure you pick the right kind of coaches that have had that experience in cultures that are similar to the culture that you have, right? Don't forget that you want to make sure that you maintain support, get some ongoing support, right? Ongoing support is going to be very important because you're going to grow. And as you grow, you're going to have to navigate different challenges. You're going to have to help the team build certain capabilities. All these things are critical to your actual growth. So having training and having coaching is not just one or the other. It is worth the money to spend, and then you don't make a disastrous mistake, right? You're still going to make mistakes. You just don't want them to be disastrous, right? They can at least say, hey, there's a hole right there. Jump over it or go around it, right? And that's what you want to have somebody do for you, right? But you also need to, but if you're going to make that investment, you need to listen to them too. You need to listen to them, right? For me, I find that, when I'm with an organization, they good for listening to me for the first 6 months. Then after that, they kind of be like, we got it. We don't want you to leave, but we don't want to listen no more. You understand where I'm coming from? If you do, let me know. But yeah, that it'd be crazy. You hear me say it'd be crazy? But the point I'm making is, for real, make the investment in training and coaching. I think it would be worth it, for real. Definitely would be worth it. Next, right? Next is going to be make sure you establish communities of practice, right? Communities of practice really do something that's really important. And I love the things that it do. The two things for me, realistically, on this list is one, share knowledge. Every time I've created a community, and I tend to create communities inside of companies that I'm working in, right? And so I like to create community practices so we can share knowledge and we can support each other. It's really hard when you're at the beginning and you don't have a lot of people that's kind of as interested, especially if you're making a transformation. And so having people who kind of get it, who can help you wipe your tears as you have them, has really always been super helpful with me. Now, I don't care if you do it or not, right? That's your choice, right? But I always establish community of practices, probably so and then I can have, shoulders to cry on, people to lean on, and other people to say, yeah, we've been successful, right? Those things are really important to me. And I don't know if they're important to you, but I would say community practices have always been super beneficial to me. And I'm not talking about going to a meetup or anything like that, because going to a meetup doesn't allow you to talk about company, real company stuff that's really going on, right? And figuring out that company stuff. And so for me, I always like to team up. I always like to team up in this kind of environment because, I think more brains is better than one. Teams of people do better jobs making decisions than individuals by themselves. So, it's one of those things where I do firmly say to you, if you can, make sure you establish some community of practice. I think you will have a way better time in life by doing that, right? So make sure you do that. Help yourself in the best way you can by doing it. And then I believe the last one here is going to be tooling and infrastructure. There's no question that as you grow, you will need tools and infrastructure that supports your short-term and long-term scaling efforts, right? I say short-term and long-term here because I think there's things that you do in the interim that won't last long-term. I think there are things that you do that help you make the transition that's not all the way the transition. So you're 50% there, so you got to do this kind of thing. So having the right infrastructure and tools to help you step along the way, I believe is extremely important. I just also believe that you shouldn't be tied long term to things, so then you can put yourself in a position where you can make a different decision if you need to. If you're going to pick a tool, make sure that you have an out for that tool. Make sure you have a way to think about sunsetting that tool, right? And being able to get your data out that tool and how easy it is to go into some other tool. I think you need to think about things like that, right? Because you just don't want to be trapped. You don't want to be trapped in a situation because, a tool may be great for your midterm growth, like in the middle of your growth, and then it might not be so great later, right? It's things like that you got to think about because like a lot of times organizations end up selecting tools that are great for the developers, but don't help the product owners out a lot, right? Don't help the business out a lot. And that's not a good long-term strategy if that's where you're at, right? You may have to think differently about a tool or figure out what things you need to do to make it work. There could be integrations or something like that. So literally, I think tools and infrastructure is just another one of those things that you can't go without. You cannot deal with this thing without thinking about it, okay? And so here's the deal. That's the scaling part, okay? Here's a question for you, right? How many people in here don't know what the heck I'm talking about when I say descaling? Have you been in a situation where you have had to work in an organization that is descaling? If you have some experience with that, let me know. If you don't have no experience with descaling, also let me know. But put it in the comments for me because I just want to take a poll in the room and see, who's really done some descaling and, because everybody seems to be doing some scaling, right? And I don't hear much about descaling, but I know for sure, Devon, Bearded Eagle, we always go into organizations and we do what we call Agile rehabs. Agile rehab is nothing but a form of descaling. Like, that's what it is, right? And normally it's because they've tried to scale and now we have to descale them. And that's what a rehab is about many a times when we walk into an organization. So I've been rehabbing for over a decade at this point, right? So that being said, let's make sure we talk about this a little bit more, right? What is descaling? The descaling thing is interesting because what you're doing at this point is something really very interesting that many people don't want to admit. People don't like to admit when they're wrong, right? When something hasn't gone the way that they expected it to. But descaling is when you're actually simplifying and you are decentralizing agile practices. Some of the major reasons why you would do that would be you have too much complexity, you have too much bureaucracy. Another really big one is dependencies. I was talking to an organization last week and they get vendors that build a portion of the life cycle, then pass it to another vendor who builds a portion of the life cycle, then pass it to another vendor that deals a portion. Those are all dependencies, right? And finding ways to descale that is something that I've had to do in several organizations because it just is untenable as you continue to grow, and you want to get the speed. What they recognize is they're not getting the speed that they need to have, and they're kind of stuck with all these dependencies. This team can't do anything with that team, so you can't really find who really did the problem wrong, so it just becomes a bigger issue, right? When you are thinking about descaling, you want to prioritize autonomy, you want to prioritize flexibility, and you want to prioritize responsiveness because the better you can adapt to change, the better you can adapt that value stream, the more effectively you can deliver value. Does that make sense? And so that's what descaling is all about, in case you didn't know. Now, on April 12th for the Agile Alliance, I'm actually going to be doing a presentation on descaling, right? But I'm going to take it from the human perspective. the human aspect of descaling, right? And so I'll let you all know more about that as we get closer to the date, but that's going to be April 12th. But yeah. Descaling, I think, at least for me, is a huge thing, right? I don't know what it is for you, but it's always the case for me, especially as I see more and more scaling occur. Now, that being said, these are just some tips to deal with, some strategies to deal with that descaling thing, right? The very first thing on my list is, pushing decision making down to the team, empowering teams to be able to make decisions independently. And the other side of that is for them to be able to take ownership of the work. That's super important. When I see that there are dependencies across teams that can't deliver independent without other teams, I find that those teams feel handcuffed. They feel handcuffs. And one of the things that the biggest complaint that I hear from them classically is that management's not doing anything to change anything, right? And it has a lot more to do with the structure versus anything else, right? And so you got to find a way to empower the team so that they can make more local decisions, right? That becomes extremely important in terms of what we do. Now, it doesn't stop there because there are more things to think about when it comes to descaling. Another thing to think about is decentralization. Finding a way to take decision-making authority and accountability and distribute that all across teams, right? One of the biggest problems that I find with scaling is I find that it still centralizes things, right? It still centralizes things, right? So you have a big, gigantic planning, right, that everybody got to make it to so we can understand all the dependencies that exist between each other. And all those dependencies just means you spend more time with coordination, which means you spend less time delivering, right? And so you really want to decentralize, right? You want to decentralize for a huge reason, right? When the military is going to war, there's places where centralized decisions are made, but they do everything in their power to put the decision making at the team and to decentralize things, right? So then teams can make independent decisions based on whatever environment that they're in. So it's super important that you decentralize as well, right? It doesn't stop there because the next thing that we want to think about is going to be streamlining processes, right? Now simplifying and streamlining agile processes helps you to eliminate the overhead and bureaucracy. And that's really important to think about. Even when I think about streamlining, forget the agile process for a second. Streamlining the value stream, right? Value stream mapping is important, but streamlining that is important. So streamlining how you build stuff, streamlining what decisions you make in terms of the requirements that's going to be there. Streamlining and everything that you can is going to be helpful for you, right? In terms of descaling. So make sure you streamline processes related to the product and related to how you get things done within your organization. I think both of those things are really, really extremely important. But I got two more things to give you here before we start to move on and open the floor for questions, right? One of them is going to be reducing dependencies. This should come as no surprise, right? Because you want to minimize dependencies between teams and systems so you can increase agility and the speed of delivery, right? If there's any one thing that management's concerned about, it is when you're going to deliver, right? And when you can streamline your ability to deliver, it helps you in so many ways. You'll find the bottlenecks within that process, right? And then you'll be able to eliminate those bottlenecks so then you get to a place where you get closer and closer to whatever it is. It increases the flow. One piece flow, get one pieces through, as you're streamlining. So you want to find ways to reduce dependencies because dependencies, they just suck. I mean, I have no better, they just suck. They slow you down, right? And in most organizations that I find that's doing scaling, they have the same amount of dependencies or more than what they had before they started scaling, which is ridiculous to me, right? Because in essence, if you read the Agile Manifesto, it doesn't point in that direction, right? And so the question that I always say to myself is, most organizations are not scaling in a way that they're considering the Agile Manifesto. If they did that, it would help them out tremendously. And part of that is, hey, let's reduce some dependencies, okay? last but not least in this section is going to be something really very simple: experimentation and learning. Today I watched the Nordstrom video that got to be from 10 maybe 15 years ago, where they actually did I guess a bunch of developers went into an actual store where they sold glasses and they had 1 week to build an app, getting real customer support, and they was able to do that in the store, right? And so they do these 1 week experiments where they go out and do something, right? And those experiments is what you're gonna have to drive innovation, and innovation that helps you with learning, right? Or at least experiments help you with learning. Even if you don't find something innovative, you find something that you don't want to do. And so learning is extremely important because you're going to improve processes and outcomes continuously when you do this, right? Absolutely continuously when you do this. So experimentation and learning is one of the major things that you have to think about doing as you go through the journey of descaling. So descaling, if you haven't done it at this point, you're going to run into it. It may not be the whole entire organization is deciding to descale, which is fine. It could be that we have a problem over here and we're going to descale this thing over here. So I'm not saying to you that it's an all or nothing. You got to descale everything. You got to scale everything. I'm always a proponent in that incremental approach. Let's try this here. Let's pilot this here. This right here, something's not right on that. Let's do a Kaizen event on it. Let's find ways to make it better. And you might be in an organization where you're doing both of those at the same time. So I think the optimal organization would be doing both scaling and descaling at the same time, but with the Agile manifesto as its guiding rails, right? Not about what to do, but what to live and breathe, right? And so for me, I just sit back and I think about these things. I think about these things all the time. And we just have to go from there. So literally, we talked about Agile scaling and descaling. Hopefully this was helpful for you because it's a different topic than what we've ever talked about before. I'm gonna be doing this, talking about it from a people perspective in April. I'll let you all know when it's gonna happen. But then the next thing that I wanna make sure that you know is this, right? Next time we get together, I found an article today that said the world's most valuable firms are Agile. And my statement really is that fake or real news? We're going to talk about that article next week. And I want to talk to you about what the position I was at before and then where I'm at now with those kind of things, right? Because I need you to be able to discern, because sometimes we say things like it's the absolute truth, and it may not be. It may not be. Because in our other vein, we'll say that Agile is not a silver bullet, but is Agile the reason for success for all these organizations? I don't know. But we'll talk about that next week. Is that fake news or is that real news? So we'll talk about that next week, so make sure you join us and see us for that one. On that note, that's it. We talked about this topic, Agile, scaling, descaling. My statement did a little bit longer like I've always done for the past few weeks, so we're good to go on that. And what I want to do is what we always do. We open the floor for questions that you may have. Now, just so you know, I've opened up the actual interview station here. So if you want to come and join me live, you're welcome to do that. Just have some real question, right, that you want to get answered, and we can talk about it face to face. And then we have the situation where, hey, you may just want to throw your question in the chat, right? So I went ahead and just threw the actual link in the chat just in case you want to join. But let's talk, y'all. What kind of questions do you all have this week related to Agile, Scrum, entrepreneurship, or whatever you want to talk about, right? I want you to drop those in the chat. And do me a favor. I didn't see everybody say hi, so make sure you drop a hi in the chat so I can give you a shout out as usual. We always do this around this time, give shout outs. I forgot to mention it at the beginning, but it's okay. Drop that hi so I can say what's up to you, see who's here, see who's in the building, see who's around. Talk to me. LinkedIn, YouTube. I want to say Facebook, but I'm not even looking at that, so I'm sorry. Facebook. But mommy, if you there, I'm saying hi. So, all right, let's see what's up, y'all. How y'all doing? So I'm going to go ahead and check out, see what's going on with people. Patrick, what's going on, my brother? How you doing? How's it going? How's life treating you? It's always good for me. I know it's always good for you. When it becomes less than that, we should holler at each other. Let's see. Rajiv, what's happening? What's going on? Hopefully you're good. Fabian, how you doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Anthony, how you doing, Anthony? How's it going, sir? All right. Miss White, I just always call her Miss White. Why? It's just a respect thing. D, what's going on with you? How you doing, D? You know, hey, I'm good, D. Hopefully you're good too, right? And let's see. I don't see anybody else that said hi over there, so that's all good. Checking LinkedIn, I don't see it there either. So you all tell me what's going on. What's happening? Y'all know what I'm doing? I'm doing 16-hour intermittent fasting at this point, right? It's crazy. You know what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to reduce the fat. You know, I got this muscle I be adding, but then I ain't reducing the fat. So I'm working on stuff, right? You know, I got these girls I still gotta go and deal with situations with people that's trying to do whatever, right? So yeah, but anyway, that's all that's really going on with me, is just making sure that I don't eat between a certain amount of hours and a certain amount of hours. That's the reason why I'm debating on if I'm gonna drink that ginger beer, because my time stops at 9 o'clock, so I can't, certain things I can and can't do. So yeah, so what's going on, people? Talk to me. How's everybody doing? Any questions? If you don't have any questions, we always can end early, because I'm here specifically to answer your questions, probably more than even to provide the topic, right? So that's why we started the whole show. So I'm actually pretty good on that. So you all tell me what's going on. Yeah, man. I tell you, man. You know, I don't know, Patrick. It's something about hitting 50 that was just like, man, I got to be prepared for these young bucks. That's what it was. I hit 50 and I was like, man, I got to be prepared for these young bucks, man. That's what I got to be. Oh man, that's the way it is, man. And that's, I gotta be prepared for these young bucks, right? So I'm over here sweating. I'm sweating, Patrick. I'm really sweating. Like, man, I got to hit the gym and do this and do that, man, and be putting it in, bro. For real, it'd be serious too. I'd be all super sweat, man. Like, oh man, this is crazy. But you know how I am at the gym? I'll be with headphones like this. I'll be having a great time, man. Well, I have a great time everywhere I go. It's ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous. People look at me strange like, hey, man, what's wrong with him? Man, I'm just having a good time. What's wrong with you is the question. I can't help it that you don't quite get it. Enjoy your life, bro. That's what I be saying to people. I don't say that to them, but I think it in my head, right? Oh, so y'all know this is Giant Size X-Men. First Storm, right? And so I had to bring out the First Storm because this is about to be the end of Black History Month. And then next month is Women's Month. So I'm kind of doing a twofer. You see what I'm doing? Storm going from, Storm's a black woman, Black History Month to women. That's our first appearance. Anyway. Look like you all right, man. Y'all saying to me, we good. We ain't got no questions. Let me check on LinkedIn, man. So I'm kind of solid, man. So yeah, well. Patrick, that's too much, man. Patrick said, I just tell myself round is a shape. Round is a shape too, man. I get it, man. But I be thinking to myself like I need to be E-Man and throw people out the building. Back in the day when I was a kid, my grandfather grabbed, a guy who was trying to get in the house. He grabbed him pretty much by the collar and just carried him out, away from the door, out the little. Cause he was in the hallway in the apartment, down the stairs, and threw him out the dang on entry doors. And I was just like, I want to be like that. So I was just like, I gotta be like my grandfather because that's what he did. I was like, I need to be prepared for that just in case. Just in case, you feel me? Not that I promote violence. Nothing about me promotes violence, but that's I don't want to be the round shape, but round is a shape, man. I agree with that 10,000%. Oh man, yeah. You know, I was about to say something I shouldn't say here, so I'm good. I ain't gonna say that, right? You got to keep everything professional. Feel me? Professional. So let's see. All right, so let's see. All right, y'all. Well, I don't see any questions happening, man. So I think we're gonna go ahead and shut it down for the day. We got our topic in. We had about 45 minutes after. Nobody has any questions, so it's good to go. So we will catch up next week. And I really do want y'all to really take a look at that article, right? So I'll give it to you next week. And I just want to see if y'all think what I think, right? And just tell me, because maybe I'm thinking too much about this stuff. But I need some other opinions, seriously, okay? So on that note, I'm going to say thank you everybody for attending. We are going to get at this again next week, same time. You know how it goes, same place. Nothing really crazy about it. Yeah, well, we do the best we can, right? Yeah, this was definitely some good info. Hopefully, you all are thinking about descaling, especially with all the scaling stuff that's happening. So I thought it was important to talk about it, and especially since I'm going to talk about it, in a conference that I think people are paying for. Maybe I'm definitely going to talk about it here too, right? So don't get it twisted, y'all, my peeps. So on that note, y'all, I'm going to say. You absolutely enjoy the rest of your week, and if you need something, just go ahead and reach out. Well, all right, I got a question, right? I almost checked out, but here's what Anthony's asking me. I'm currently working with a portfolio of different Scrum teams. The job spec requires me to conduct 2 sprints with each team. What advice would you give for this job requirement? Are you working with the company or not? If it's a job requirement, then to me that means you're not in the company. But if you are in the company, you should do what they ask you to do because they're paying you, right? Now, if they're paying you to help them change, then you need to give them a lot of great advice, right? But when you say conduct 2 sprints, is that 1 sprint per team? Is that 2 sprints per team? And when you say 2 sprints, does that mean you're doing 2 concurrent sprints? Does that mean you're doing 1 sprint and 1 sprint after that? And what happens? They only do 2 sprints, that's it? Or you're doing 2 sprints and you're releasing? I don't know. So my question for you is, I don't know what conducting 2 sprints each team means, but it's a job requirement and you don't have the job yet and you don't like that idea, I wouldn't go work for them, right? If it is a job that you got and they are doing 2 sprints, I would investigate why they're doing 2 sprints in any kind of way that they're doing it, right? I would try to understand why they're doing it, because I think that one of the most important things that you can do is understand current state. And then, based on my understanding of current state, then I would provide a recommendation for future state, right? And if it's my team and they allow me to make changes to my team, then my team would be the first one to pilot that future state. So, and then I can show everybody else in the organization how this will work. Because if you change, that doesn't mean every other team that you connect with will change, right? And so those teams could have different requirements, right? Their definition of done can connect to your definition of ready, right? It could be all kinds of situations going on there. And so it is extremely important for you to understand current state and then determine what the future state is. But whatever those changes is going to be and whichever changes is going to be for whatever team, make sure that you pilot those things so you can make mistakes. And then as you make those mistakes and you improve those mistakes, then grow it from there. based on your success to other teams, right? If you find ways to be successful with a new way of doing things, then other teams probably won't have many questions about adjusting themselves, right? I just don't know what your situation is because there's many ways that you can go. I have a thought process of what I think it is, but I can't guarantee that I understand that completely, right? I'm working as a vendor service. That doesn't tell me what 2 sprints mean, though, right? And so, regardless of what 2 sprints mean, if you are a vendor, and again, I'm assuming that you mean vendor here, right? There's a contract. There's a contract. The first question I would ask you is, does your contract limit customer collaboration? There's contract negotiation, customer collaboration. One of them we want to do more than the other one, right? You should know that from the Agile Manifesto. So as a vendor who likely has a contract, what does the contract say you can do and you can't do? Some contracts are built to solely support a traditional way of doing work. And then others are there to support a more agile way of doing work. So for me, I would think about the contract first. Now, if you don't have access to the contract, somebody does. Somebody knows how you all need to collaborate, right? And so I'm thinking about how we are contractually obligated here. Because if you go outside of the contract and things go wrong, it's your neck that's on the line, right? So you got to be really, 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 I understand. So 2 concurrent sprints with each team. This is regardless of release. I wouldn't recommend doing that. What does 2 concurrent sprints really mean? Does that mean that you have 2 different teams that's working a sprint, or you have one team that has 2 separate sprints? One team that's working 2 separate sprints makes no sense. It just makes no logical sense because one team can work 1 sprint. So what's the point of having 2 concurrent sprints? So I would try to find out, why the heck do I have 2 concurrent sprints with 1 team? You understand where I'm coming from? And the question is, are these sprints identical in terms of their start and ending time? Or are they staggered in some kind of way? If so, what is the reason for that? It almost sounds like to me you have a development sprint and a testing sprint, right? That's what it sounds like to me, right? And so that makes no sense. So it's like one team stuff goes into the other team and you're just running them concurrently, and that still is a problem. So I wouldn't do that. But again, I would go back to the statement of, why are you doing it? Why are they doing things that way? Why are they doing things that way? And it's going to likely be because of dependencies. It's going to likely be because of you have requirements that are absolutely too big. Those will be some of the reasons why you're probably doing that, right? And so I would go back to the initial statement that I made. You need to determine what is the current state and why they're doing what they're doing, right? If you understand that, then you can find justification on changing it, right? And it sounds like to me, if they're doing 2 concurrent sprints and it's one team, when I say one team, not a sub-team of developers and a sub-team of testers, right? The current state was written for each team to follow. However, the teams are not able to grasp the written process to follow the Agile Scrum framework. Okay, but you're an Agile coach. You can train them, right? And so the question that I would ask you is, can you train them? Can you change things? So really, do you have any power to change anything? That's the question. Because if you do, Scrum, you can change it. But if you can't, then you got to go to the powers that be to justify whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? And so for me, again, it sounds like they have taken the Agile process and they've made it traditional. That's what it sounds like to me, right? Which could be true. It may not be true. I don't know. But I would go back to figure out why. Why? Patrick says, inquire about reasons for doing things that way, and if you need to suggest a better way, which is a part of being agile. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, Patrick. I just said it as figure out the current state, find out why they're doing things the way that they're doing it, and then figure out how you can change it. If you can change it by yourself, do it. If you cannot change it by yourself, then you got a lot of negotiations to do. Which means you're just providing recommendations at that point, and you kind of go from there. So again, I think Patrick has hit it on the nail. I think I've hit it the same way. It is find out the reason why they do it that way, right? Some organizations, they do something a certain way because they had a major failure. They had something that really, 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 really went wrong. And since they had something that really, 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 really went wrong, they're just like, we don't want to continue to be in a position where things are really, really, really going wrong. And so they put things in place or processes in place to try to prevent it from going wrong ever again. And that's not always a way to deal with it. It's just not, right? And so, Anthony, I'm not sure if that helped, but the idea is, I've said it, Patrick said it, figure out what the current state is, and then figure out what you can do based on the constraints that you have, right? And I think that's how you change it. And if you take that incremental approach that we talked about earlier in terms of trying to make this change, descaling, I think you'll be fine at that point, right? But I would start off with finding out the current state, figure out the reasons why they do the things that they do, and then go from there. And I've said this before on the show. To me, everything is about gap analysis, and gap is current state to future state, and what is the difference, and how you're going to get from current state to future state, right? And so you have an idea where you want to go future state. You need to understand current state and figure out how you can transition from one place to the next. And so I think that you're good to go, right? Yeah, there's obviously dependencies that exist, right? After the second sprint, I will then work with another team. You are correct about dependencies, right? And so then it goes back to another thing, right? Structure and complexities are a large part of what happens when you scale. And you're just going to have to really descale at this point. So what we talked about in terms of descaling is kind of what you need to do. But I think finding out current state is the best way to start, right? And then you can figure out what's the best way to descale that process. And here's the unfortunate part for you, Anthony. It sounds like to me that you're probably not going to have any control or be able to help make any decisions related to it. The fact is, a lot of times with me as an Agilist, I haven't been able to change things because I didn't have any power, right? Okay, that's good. I'm glad you're training them, and they probably have they're getting a better understanding. And now that you're training them, they see what the future can look like. And now only thing you got to do is start taking the steps toward that future. But just make sure you don't do it in big bang. Make sure you do it with pilots. Make sure you start off small. Make sure that you grow accordingly, okay? Whatever you do, right? Just the application of that training, make it small because you're likely going to run into a lot of hiccups, okay? So it sounds like you're doing good, man. So look, Anthony, you don't need me, man. You don't need me. You know what you're doing, brother. You know what you're doing. Come on now, give it a program. No, you sound like you know what you're doing, man. So I would. I'm just echoing what Patrick's echoed. I'm just taking y'all leadership at this point. So you sound like you're good to go. All right, y'all. I think that's it. So thank you, Anthony, for answering that question. That kept us here for a little while longer. But other than that, I'm going to say to you all, hey, make sure you have a wonderful, wonderful, amazing rest of your evening and rest of the week. And then I'll see you next week for that question I have in mind, right? Because I got to say some things and get it off my heart. And I'm not sure if I'm going to have a little presentation next week, but I'm going to show you the article, and I just want you all to help me do some investigation, okay? All right, y'all. I'll see you all next week. Make sure you have an amazing week. Peace, man. This has been great. I will see you next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Central Time. Bye-bye, y'all. Thank you so much.